Is God. You'll see there that video that we just watched was from Madrid, a parade to celebrate King's Day, which is today is the 12th day of Christmas, the eve of Epiphany or King's Day, and then tomorrow, January 6th, is actual King's Day or Epiphany. How many of you have celebrated King's Day in the past in some form or fashion? Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Quite a few of you. That's wonderful. It is a wonderful time of the year. There are parades. I know New York has a big parade every year for King's Day. Other parts of the country celebrate with festivals, and here even in Illinois. There are lots of ways that people celebrate this King's Day. It is a day to remember that the Magi, or these kings or wise men, came to visit Jesus and worshiped him and brought gifts to him. And it's an exciting thing to celebrate. Let me show you another picture. Did you notice on the video that some of the kids were saying that they were waiting for their gifts tomorrow morning? Not on Christmas Day, but on King's Day. And that they asked the wise men to bring them something? Did you catch that? One of the kids said that. It's not on. There we go. But you see the shoes here that many of the children, they put shoes next to their beds. And some of them even put hay or grass inside them. For the camels, of course. And in the morning, they hope that when they wake up, the hay would have been eaten, the grass is gone, and inside their shoes they would find goodies or gifts. Isn't that exciting? Doesn't it sound familiar to another American version of asking the wise men to come by your house and bring a gift, and it doesn't hurt to leave something for them? But this is a way that some people celebrate. Yes, Jesus Christ came, and we celebrate that birth on Christmas Day. But it's very important to celebrate that the Magi came, and we're going to talk about that this morning. Why did they come? Why is it worth celebrating? I want to point out one more thing, and that there is a king's cake, and you see a picture of it up on the screen there. This king's cake, or king's wreath, as it's sometimes called, is another traditional way of celebrating King's Day in different parts of the country and the world. It's shaped as a crown, like a king's crown, has candied fruit on it, and sugar, because everything is better with sugar. And it is to celebrate this crown that the kings came. And I brought one with me today. Yesterday I got the last one at Walmart. Thank goodness I got there when I did. But anyway, I brought one here. I don't work for them, but it's made by Bimbo, this one. But you can get them at all kinds of bakeries as well that made homemade. I just don't know my way around those bakeries yet. But I have one of the cakes like pictured up on the screen there. And afterwards, when service is over, you can go out in the lobby there and you can take a piece of it with you or eat it right away. Michael is going to come and put it out there. It's already cut, and he already has the napkins, and it's all ready to go. It's a sweet cake inside. It's plain inside. There's just the candied parts are on the top. So it's not like a fruit cake and where it's dense and filled with fruit. The inside is just a sweet cake. It's really good. But now I have to give you a warning. Be careful when you bite into it, because you might bite into something hard. And I don't want you to say that I broke my tooth because Pastor didn't warn me. Because inside the cake are 3 baby Jesuses. Not real ones. Plastic ones. There are plastic baby Jesuses inside the cake. So when you get a slice, you might want to look at it before you bite into it in case you see a piece of a baby sticking out of it. But that is a tradition for some cultures with this cake. And you see, in some cultures, like in the Orthodox churches, sometimes the Catholic churches and other churches, they celebrate this. And the Epiphany, or the coming of Jesus to all of mankind, is so important that they celebrate seasons. And in the beginning of January, they celebrate that Jesus was presented at the temple. You know the story with Simeon and Anna and all that? They have a day set aside to remember that every year in February. The way some, the way some traditions do it, whoever finds the baby has to make tamales or something for that day when they gather and have the, but today we're not going to do that. If you find a baby, Michael has a little treat for you that you could take with you. You get a gift if you find a baby. Now please don't tear through the cake trying to find the baby Jesus, but there are 3 of them in this one. You'll have to know that the French, the Spanish cultures in Europe have been doing this since the Middle Ages. And when they came to the Americas, they brought it with them, and so we have pockets of this being celebrated here in America. Now the French brought it over a little bit differently and brought it into New Orleans and Louisiana, and they sprinkle theirs with sprinkles and sugar on top instead of the strips of candy. But there are variations of it. But I want you to know that this is celebrated. I don't know, sometimes in our American culture, we kind of just say, oh yeah, there's the whole story of Mary and Joseph, and the baby was born, and the manger, and and the shepherds and the angels. Yeah, and the wise men came and brought their gifts, and we kind of just leave it as one clump story. But the wise men, these magi, are an important part of the story that sometimes deserve to be emphasized. I referred to this earlier, Matthew chapter 2. This is verses 1 and 2. It says, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. Isn't it great that these men that were not from Jerusalem, not from Israel, but from the Far East somewhere, came and knew of the birth of Jesus? They came and followed this star and came to this place that was known as a place of Jewish people. These Gentiles came to worship the King of the Jews. You may wonder, well, how did they even know that what the star meant when they saw this star in the sky? And you need to know that some believe that these magi or wise men were astrologers, and maybe from the area of Persia and that area. We're not going to get into a study today of who they were, nor necessarily the gifts that they brought. But I want us to think about, they came from the east to visit a baby that was born that was Jewish. If you remember Daniel in the Old Testament, he was a chief in the court of the seers in Persia. And so his teachings were written and documented outside of Israel. In Numbers chapter 24, God speaks through a person called Balaam, and he says, a star will rise up out of Jacob and a scepter out of Israel. Now, if these wise men were of the east, they might have been familiar with these writings that occurred in the east. And it says that a star will rise up out of Jacob and a scepter out of Israel. A king. A king. And the scepter represents that king. And what would be the sign? A star coming out of Jacob. If we continue to read in Matthew chapter 2, verses 9 through 11, it says, when they heard the king, referring to the Magi, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother. And they fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gold and frankincense and myrrh. We often focus on this part of the story as, well, they brought him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. This morning, we're not going to talk about the gifts in detail, just that these were gifts that were extravagant, elaborate. They cost something even to these men. And they offered him to Jesus. Not somebody of their own people, not somebody from their own land, because they knew he was different. These wise men are sometimes referred to as kings, people who were looked up to in their society, came. Not only gave of themselves in a long time, their possessions, but humbled themselves and bowed down, and they worshiped this baby. We're going to talk about why in a moment. But I want us to think about the story for a moment. I just want to point out to you that a lot of times when we see this story, we kind of get the image of these three men, right? On three camels. We get that image in our head. Now, the Bible doesn't say there were three. It says there were three gifts presented, right? And I want you to know that if they were truly wise men, if they were truly kings, or they probably didn't cook much for themselves. They probably had somebody to put up their tents for them. They probably had tents for this long journey. They probably had more than 3 camels. There were probably a bunch of camels. Isaiah 60, verse 6, and if you're not familiar with Isaiah in the Old Testament, he spoke a lot about the coming Messiah. But in Isaiah 60, verse 6, it says, herds of camels will cover your land. Young camels of Midian and Ephah. And all from Sheba will come, bearing gold and incense and proclaiming the praise of the Lord. I don't know exactly how many a multitude is, but that's what some translations say, but NIV says here, herds of camels will cover your land. It's quite a different image than our little nativity sets, right? Now, I'm not saying go out and buy 100 camels and put them around your nativity set. But I want you to get this idea. This was a big deal. And when this group of leaders, foreigners, came into Bethlehem with their entourage, I will call them, and filled that town, everybody knew something's going on. And it was a moment that needed to be remembered. You know, we also get the image a lot of times with our nativities and our things that Jesus' visit by the Magi happened the night he was born. Probably not going to happen that way. It didn't happen that way. I want you to know that in other parts of the country, when people have nativities and they have camels or the Magi, they don't put them out until the night before January 6th, King's Day. That the Christmas celebration continues, and it starts off with Mary and Joseph and then the shepherds, and then after the 12 days of Christmas, there you go. Now let's celebrate the Magi and their coming. Probably they came at least 40 days after Jesus was born. I'll show you why. In Luke chapter 2, it says, on the 8th day, when it was time to circumcise the child, he was named Jesus, the name the angel gave him. Verse 22, it's not up there yet, but it says, when the time came for the purification rites required by the law of Moses, Joseph and Mary took him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. Then in verse 24, it says, and to offer a sacrifice in keeping with what is said of the law of the Lord, a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons. So what we're reading here is basically that Mary and Joseph were devout Jews. They were devout in raising their child, the Messiah, in the ways of God. And so after 8 days, they had to go and present their son and have him circumcised. Then they went back home, and Mary, as all mothers would be considered unclean for 40 days after delivery. When those 40 days were up, a woman, a mother, would have to go back to the temple for her purification rites. In Leviticus, I'll just read this for you. Leviticus is chapter 12. It says, a woman who becomes pregnant and gives birth to a son will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days, just as she's unclean during her monthly period. On the 8th day, the boy is to be circumcised. Verse 4 says, then the woman must wait 33 more days to be purified from her bleeding, so for about 40 days. Now, if she can't afford a lamb, it goes on to say, she is to bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons for a burnt offering and another for a sin offering. If the Magi would have come before these 40 days were up, they would have had gold, not to mention frankincense and myrrh. They probably would have been able to afford a lamb. But they couldn't. So they presented what was called a poor man's offering, which are a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons. Do you understand that the Magi probably didn't come and present them with gold and didn't have this big ceremony in Bethlehem before this? So I want us to think about for a moment. Okay, Pastor, I get it. The Magi come, it was a big celebration, but why is it worth celebrating? Why does it deserve a separate celebration? And why call it Epiphany? Well, the word Epiphany means manifestation or appearance. When Jesus was born, there was an appearance of a star, right? When he was born, the appearance of an angel. But we're talking about the manifestation or the appearance of God, Jesus, the Son of God. And we have to understand that when Jesus was born, the angel announced it, and shepherds came, and that's a great part of the story. But when Jesus went in after 40 days, Anna and Simeon both declared he was the Son of God. Then the Magi came. People might even call them pagans. Gentiles came, bowed down and worshiped him. He was more than just a future king of the Jews. This is something we have to understand today. Jesus was born as a baby boy into a Jewish family. Jewish mom, Jewish dad, in a Jewish town called Bethlehem, followed the Jewish customs, traditions, laws, raised within that. But God didn't come just to build a Jewish religion. He came to use the Jewish people to bring forth the Messiah to the world, to save the world and bring mankind back into the right relationship with God. I want to point out to you, it says in Luke chapter 2, verse 10, that the angel said to them, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to who? All people." No, just the Jewish people? No. Just the people of Bethlehem? No. How about Judea? No. To all people. The angel was making a statement there that I don't know if it was fully understood. We don't know. But he said this, I'm telling you, this is going to be great joy. This is good news that is for all people. the angel began by starting to tell this story is not just for a group of people. It's bigger. It's much bigger. I mentioned Simeon. Simeon says in Luke chapter 2, verses 30 through 32, "For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all nations." Do you guys get that? This is happening, and the world knows it. It is happening in the sight of all nations. A light, do you get what he's talking about here? A light has been assigned for all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles, and the glory for your people Israel. So he's saying here, this is bringing glory to the people Israel, but it is a revelation to the Gentiles as well. This is a sight for all nations. It is a light that has come for all people. And that is something worth celebrating. I want us to think about this morning. Where have you come from? Where has your family come from? I don't say we all came from America, because our ancestors came from elsewhere. Some of you might say, oh, I'm Irish, or I'm Spanish, I'm Italian, I'm African. Might get more specific exactly where you're from. But I want you to know that no matter where you were born, no matter where your ancestors came from, he came for you. I want you to know that he came for you, and no matter who your family is, no matter what that last name that you have, it might be a famous last name, it might be a last name that you've never heard of anybody else but your family. It might have a bad connotation to it. It might be the same last name as somebody famous. But whatever your name is, he came for you. The reason why we celebrate that Jesus came was that he came as the Son of God. He was declared not just the King of the Jews, but that he was the Son of God. These magi, and I want you to know that these magi, some people think that maybe they were astrologers, and the Old Testament talks about not being into astrology. That was sinful. I'm telling you that they were watching the stars, and God says, okay, well, I'm going to put a star in the sky, and you're going to see it, and you're going to know it, because that's what you're looking at. And he spoke through a star to them, and they came. And they might have been considered by the Jewish people pagans and doing things they ought not to. But you know what? God came for them. He was their king. And when they came and bowed down and worshiped before him, they were declaring that I know that I did not from all of this, and I don't know all these traditions, and I don't know when I'm supposed to stand and when I'm supposed to sit, and I don't know what this is all about and why all these people do these traditions. But I know one thing, that I saw something, and it spoke to me, and I know what God has spoken to me inside, and it's led me to leave my place. It's led me to leave my land. It's led me to take this journey and come to you. And I know for something, these magi just bowed down, and they said, here, have our gold, and have our incense, and have these things, and we're just going to bow down, and we're just going to worship you. Wow. The reason why this is celebrated, even today, in many pockets and groups of people, is that not that Jesus was just born as a Jewish baby, but that he was the Son of God, and he came for all of us. And I don't know about you. I don't know if I have any real Jewish heritage. I know one of my descendants was Noah. But, I have Italian and Wales, descendant from Wales and in my family. And I don't know if I'm really that Jewish, nor my family. But King's Day reveals to me, it helps me recognize that I am a Gentile. And it doesn't matter that he came for me. And so, yeah, I celebrate that Jesus was born in Bethlehem on Christmas. But then I take this day to remember that he didn't just come for the Jews. He came for all of us. He came for me. He came for the people that were from a land far away. He came from the people that were different. And God would unite his people. And I believe that's what God is doing here. Amen. He wants to bring us together no matter where our background is from, what we've come from, what our native tongue is. He wants to bring us together. Our world wants to separate and divide and put labels. The manger was open. Jesus was open to anybody who came. And these magi came, and when they knelt down before him, it's worth celebrating because we know that he's our God too. He's our God. And he's worthy to be celebrated. He came for you and I. Wow. There are lots of theologies out there today about inclusion, and there are some that say, oh, we all worship the same God, it doesn't matter anyway. But Jesus, the Epiphany tells us he appeared as the Son of God. And when he was baptized, a voice from heaven spoke out and said, "This is my Son." He is God. He's God. Don't lose that in this whole Christmas story, that this baby was God. And he loves you. He loves you so much that he came to this world as a baby. He came to you. To make a sacrifice on your behalf. He gave his life for us. And so Jesus said, I am the way. See, he's the only way to God. See, you can't get to God in any other way but his Son. If we skip the Epiphany, we skip the whole idea that he was declared the Son of God and he is the Son of God. And if we say, and we skip that thought and we just say, oh, it's nice to have this whole story of his birth, but that's it. And people can say, well, I'll go to God this way and I'll go to God that way. No. He came, God came through the form of a baby named Jesus. The angels declared it, not just one. The skies filled with angels declaring, holy, holy, holy. A prophetess said, this is the Son of God. Simeon, who the Holy Spirit spoke through, said, no. This is the God of all mankind. And then, when he's a little older and goes to be baptized, God says, this is my Son. He was revealed by angels and shepherds, by Gentiles, by a star, by a prophetess, by a saint of God, and by God himself as the Son of God. He is our access to God. He is what brings us into restoration. He is the one that brings us into that right relationship back with God. And so today we celebrate God Amen. We celebrate the Son of God. We celebrate that he came, and he came for us. And so around the world tonight and tomorrow, different places, people are celebrating. They're having parades. They're having festivals. They're eating. Best way to celebrate. Some are giving gifts, and some are dressing up like magi, whatever they look like. And they're having great times because they're celebrating. Whether you're from Spain or whether you're from France or Russia, whether you're from America, no matter who we are, he came for us. And we celebrate that today, no matter who we are. And I want you to know, no matter what your background, no matter what your history, no matter what you've done, it doesn't matter today. He'll forgive you. And no matter what is happening in life, he can forgive you. He can forgive them. He can bring restoration. And he will. He will. So he's worth celebrating today. And I don't know about you, but I just say, whoo, he is worthy to be praised. Hallelujah. He is holy, holy, holy. The Lord God Almighty. He is the Lamb that was slain for you and I. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.